Dash. Imagine working your whole life to buy a home, a place you could finally call yours, your safe space, your biggest accomplishment. Now imagine your younger brother, the golden child of your parents, demanding that you hand it over to him, his wife, and their kids, just because he thinks he deserves it more. When I refused, my parents turned against me. They called me selfish, heartless, and accused me of destroying the family. What started as a simple no quickly escalated into harassment, screaming matches, police showing up at my doorstep, and even court. This isn't just a story about property. It's about betrayal, manipulation, and realizing that sometimes the people who are supposed to love you the most are the ones who will try to ruin you. This is my story. Part 1. The house that was never mine. I never thought I would be writing something like this, but my life has turned into the kind of nightmare you usually see in bitter family posts on Reddit. If someone had told me a few years ago that my parents and younger brother would band together and try to push me out of my own house, I would have laughed. Yet here I am. My name is Daniel. I'm 33 years old, and I've lived alone in the house I bought 7 years ago. It's not a mansion, but it's a nice 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in a quiet suburb. I worked overtime shifts, sacrificed vacations, and went through years of sleepless nights to scrape together enough for the down payment. Every inch of this place represents my independence. It's my safe space. But to my family, it's apparently just a convenient resource for my younger brother, Jason, who has always been the golden child. Jason is 29, married to his high school sweetheart, Emily. Together, they already have 2 kids and another one on the way. I don't have kids. I'm not even in a relationship at the moment. And apparently, that fact alone makes me less deserving of keeping the house I worked for. Growing up in the shadow of Jason. I guess I should back up a little and explain the family dynamic. Jason was always the favorite. Always. He was the kind of kid who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. He brought home a C on a math test. He tried his best. He crashed Dad's car when he was 17. It was just an accident, poor thing. Me? If I got a B plus instead of an A, I was lazy. If I forgot to mow the lawn once, I was irresponsible. When Jason announced at 22 that he was going to marry Emily despite not having a stable job, my parents celebrated like it was the royal wedding. When I told them a year later that I had finally managed to secure a solid job in IT after years of freelancing, they barely said good for you. I learned early on that nothing I did would ever measure up to Jason in their eyes. He was the golden boy, and I was tolerated. Still, I thought that once we grew older, had our own lives, things would mellow out. I thought wrong. The first hints of trouble. It started subtly. About 6 months ago, during Sunday dinner at my parents' house, my mom said casually, "You know, Danny, your house is really too big for just one person." I shrugged. I like having the space. Jason chimed in with a laugh. "Yeah, man, you're living like a king over there." Meanwhile, Emily and I are crammed into that tiny apartment with 2 kids and another on the way. It's brutal. Dad put his fork down and gave me that look, half stern, half manipulative. Maybe it's time you start thinking about family. Your brother has real responsibilities now. He needs room for his kids. At the time, I brushed it off. Families say dumb things, right? I figured it was just talk. But the comments didn't stop. Every dinner, every phone call, every casual visit, someone would make a remark about my big, empty house and Jason's poor, struggling family. Emily even started dropping not-so-subtle hints. "Oh, Danny, if only we had a backyard like yours. The kids would love it. They'd finally have space to run around safely." I tried to ignore it, tried to change the subject, but it became harder and harder to shrug off when it was constant. The first direct ask. One evening, Jason came over uninvited. He brought a six-pack of beer like it was going to soften the blow. We sat in my living room, and after a few minutes of small talk, he just said it. Look, man, Emily and I were talking, and honestly, it makes sense. You don't need this place. We do. You're single, no kids, and you work all the time. You'd be fine in a smaller apartment. Hell, you could even rent a place closer to the city. Meanwhile, my kids are growing up in a shoebox. I stared at him, thinking he was joking. But he wasn't. He was dead serious. You're actually asking me to give you my house. I asked. Not give, he said quickly. Just, transfer it. For family. Mom and Dad agree. It's the right thing. You'll get another place. This house should be where family grows, not where one guy hides away. I laughed in disbelief. Jason, I paid for this house. Every cent. You've never even made a mortgage payment in your life. And you think I should just hand it over because you chose to have kids? His face hardened. It's not about that. It's about doing what's fair for the family. I told him to leave. That was the first time things escalated. The pressure campaign. After that, the phone call started. Mom would call me almost daily. Danny, don't be selfish. Your brother needs you. Danny, think of the children. They shouldn't have to grow up in a cramped apartment. Danny, you're older. It's your responsibility to look out for Jason. Dad even came over once and tried to guilt-trip me face to face. He stood in my kitchen, looking around at the house I worked for, and said, we always hoped this house would be a family home. You're not even using the extra rooms. What's the point? I told him the point was that I paid for it. He didn't like that answer. The first police incident. Things really went off the rails one Saturday morning. I woke up to noise outside and found Jason, Emily, and the kids in my front yard, unloading boxes from their car. What the hell are you doing? I shouted. Jason looked up, casual as could be. Moving in. You'll adjust, man. Emily gave me a fake sweet smile. It's temporary. Until you sort things out. I lost it. I told them to get off my property immediately. Jason argued, saying Mom and Dad told him it was fine. I called the police. When the officers arrived, Jason tried to spin it like a family misunderstanding. He told them, my brother agreed to let us stay here. He's just having second thoughts. I had to show the cops the deed and mortgage papers just to prove the house was mine. They told Jason and Emily to leave immediately or risk trespassing charges. Jason glared at me the whole time as they packed the kids back into the car. You're gonna regret this, he muttered. Escalation. From that day on, the situation spiraled. My parents stopped being subtle and started outright taking Jason's side. They told me I was cruel, heartless, that I was destroying the family by refusing to share. Jason started blowing up my phone with texts. You're pathetic. You'll die alone in that house. My kids will hate you when they're old enough to know what you did. At one point, Mom even tried to guilt-trip me by saying, if you loved your family, you'd make sacrifices. Jason has a family. You don't. That's the difference. I blocked their numbers for a while, but then they started showing up at my house uninvited. One night, I came home from work and found my parents' car in my driveway. They were inside with Jason and Emily, sitting in my living room like they owned the place. I called the police again. The officers escorted them out, but I could see the anger in their eyes. This wasn't going to end quietly. Part 2. Family versus blood. After the night, I found my parents and Jason sitting in my living room like it belonged to them. Something inside me broke. It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about control. It was about years of being treated like the disposable son, while Jason was worshipped like the second coming. I realized that my family didn't see me as a person with rights or boundaries. I was just an obstacle between Jason and what he wanted. And obstacles, in their minds, could be removed. The harassment begins. The morning after that incident, I woke up to find my front lawn littered with trash bags, old toys, and even a broken crib. At first, I thought maybe some neighbors had dumped stuff, but tucked into one of the trash bags was a note scrawled in Jason's handwriting. Your house should be filled with family, not your selfishness. I wanted to march over to his apartment and shove the note down his throat, but I held back. Instead, I filed a police report for harassment. The officer was sympathetic but honest. Unless I had video footage of them dumping the stuff, it was going to be hard to prove. So I installed cameras. Front yard, backyard, doorbell cam. If they wanted to keep harassing me, I was going to catch them red-handed. Sure enough, 3 nights later, the footage showed Jason pulling up in his minivan, Emily helping him unload boxes, and the two of them sneaking things onto my porch. One of the boxes was filled with children's books and baby clothes. When I confronted him with the video via text, he didn't even deny it. He just replied, "It's not harassment. It's a message. You'll give in eventually." The family meeting. A week later, my parents insisted I come over for dinner. Against my better judgment, I went. I figured maybe, just maybe, they were ready to talk like reasonable people. Of course, I was wrong. The moment I walked in, I could feel the ambush. Jason and Emily were already there, the kids running around the living room. Mom had that fake sweet smile plastered on her face, the one she always used when she was about to manipulate me. We sat down at the table, and after a few bites of food, Dad cleared his throat. "Danny, your mother and I have been talking with Jason and Emily," he began. "It's time to stop this nonsense. You're tearing the family apart. The solution is simple. Sign the house over to Jason." I put my fork down. "Absolutely not." Mom leaned forward, her voice syrupy. "Sweetheart, listen. You don't understand what it means to raise children in a tiny apartment. It's not fair to them. You have more than you need, and Jason has less than he deserves." I laughed bitterly. Less than he deserves? He's never worked a full-time job longer than 6 months. He relies on you two for money constantly. I worked my ass off for that house. Why do you think he deserves it? Jason slammed his hand on the table. "Because I have a family, Dan. You don't. You're wasting space while my kids suffer." The room went silent. Finally, Dad said, "If you don't do this willingly, we'll find another way." That was when I realized this wasn't just family pressure. This was war. Escalation with the police. The next escalation came 2 weeks later. I was at work when my neighbor called me. Dan, there's a moving truck outside your house. Looks like your brother is trying to move in again." I sped home, heart pounding. Sure enough, Jason had hired a moving truck and was unloading furniture onto my driveway. Emily was directing the movers, acting like she owned the place. I marched up and shouted, "Get the hell off my property." Emily had the audacity to smirk. We talked to Mom and Dad. They said it's fine. This is our house now. I called the police immediately. When the officers arrived, Jason tried the same sob story, claiming it was a family misunderstanding. But this time, I had the deed ready, and I showed them the previous harassment reports. The police told Jason if he set one more foot on my property, they would arrest him for trespassing. They made him load everything back into the truck and leave. The look he gave me as they drove away could have curdled milk. Smear campaign. After that failed attempt, my family switched tactics. Instead of direct harassment, They started a smear campaign. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly began calling me. Danny, why are you being so cruel to Jason? He's your little brother. He has children. Don't you care about family? Turns out, my parents had been telling everyone in the extended family that I was hoarding a house I didn't even want, while Jason and Emily struggled in poverty. They painted me as some kind of greedy villain who hated children. At a cousin's birthday party, one of my uncles actually pulled me aside and said, "What you're doing is shameful. Family comes first." I wanted to scream. Instead, I left the party early. Legal threats. It wasn't long before Jason sent me an official-looking letter. At first, I thought it was a joke, but no, it was a letter from some cheap lawyer he'd hired, claiming that my house was marital property of the family and that Jason had a rightful claim because he was promised inheritance. I nearly fell out of my chair laughing. The house wasn't inherited. It wasn't even connected to my parents. I bought it on my own, with my own money. But the letter was clearly meant to scare me. I contacted a lawyer myself, who reassured me that Jason didn't have a leg to stand on. Still, the fact that he was willing to drag this into the legal system terrified me. The breaking point. The final straw of part 2 happened late one Friday night. I was sitting in my living room, watching TV, when I heard banging on the front door. Loud, angry banging. I checked the camera. Jason was outside, drunk, yelling, "Open the door, Dan. This is my house too. You can't keep us out forever." I didn't move. I just called the police again. By the time they arrived, Jason was sitting on my porch swaying back and forth, muttering to himself. They arrested him for disorderly conduct. Emily came screeching down the street as they put him in the squad car, screaming at me that I was ruining their lives. I stood there on my porch, shaking, watching as the flashing lights disappeared into the night. That was the moment I realized my family wasn't going to stop. Not until they destroyed me or I found a way to cut them out completely. Part 3: Bloodlines and Battle Lines. The night Jason was hauled off in handcuffs should have been the end of it. In any sane world, that would have been the wake-up call. You don't try to move into someone else's house, harass them for months, and then escape consequences. But my family doesn't live in a sane world. To them, Jason wasn't in the wrong. No, to them, I was the problem. I was the selfish, heartless older brother who had forced the police to humiliate Jason, and they weren't going to forgive me for it. The parental betrayal. The next morning, my parents showed up unannounced again. I didn't answer the door. Through the camera, I watched them pound and shout until my dad finally leaned close to the doorbell and hissed, "Danny, you've gone too far. That's your brother. Your blood. You can't call the police on him like he's some stranger. You're destroying this family." My mom's voice was shrill behind him. "We'll never forgive you for this. Never. You'd rather see Jason in jail than do the right thing? Shame on you." I didn't respond. Eventually they left, but I knew this wasn't over. Sure enough, 2 days later I got a letter in the mail. This one from my parents' lawyer. The inheritance card. The letter claimed that since my parents had always intended for Jason to inherit the family home someday, I was morally obligated to transfer my house to him now. It was dressed up in legal language, but my lawyer laughed when I showed it to him. "Morally obligated doesn't mean legally obligated," he said. "They don't have a case. They're trying to intimidate you." Still, I felt sick. My own parents had put their names on official paperwork to try and strip me of the one thing I'd built for myself: filing for a restraining order. At that point, my lawyer recommended I file for a restraining order against Jason. The repeated trespassing, harassment, the late-night drunken outburst, It all added up. I hated the idea. He was my brother. Filing a restraining order felt final, like I was admitting there was no going back. But there wasn't. So I filed. The court date was set for 2 weeks later. Jason would be served papers and required to appear. The family backlash. When Jason got served, all hell broke loose. Emily posted a long, ranting Facebook status about how I was destroying a father's life and tearing children away from their uncle. She painted me as some kind of monster, gleefully ruining their happiness. Family friends called me, disgusted. One even left a voicemail saying, "I hope you rot in that house alone." I stopped answering calls. I stopped going to family gatherings. I isolated myself just to stay sane. But even isolation wasn't enough. The vandalism. One night, I came home to find spray paint across my garage door. Big red letters. Selfish. Traitor. Blood doesn't matter to you. I called the police, of course. They took photos, filed a report. The security footage showed two figures in hoodies, but their faces were hidden. I recognized Jason's walk instantly, but when the police questioned him, he denied it. I was home with my kids, he claimed. Emily backed him up. No charges filed. Just another report. Court day. The day of the restraining order hearing, my stomach was in knots. I wore my best suit, clutched my lawyer's notes, and walked into the courthouse like I was walking into a battlefield. Jason was already there, sitting with Emily and my parents. He looked smug, like he'd already won. My mom wouldn't even look at me. My dad glared like I was the devil incarnate. The judge listened patiently as my lawyer laid out the evidence. The trespassing attempts, the moving truck incident, the drunk outburst caught on camera, the harassment texts, the vandalism, though we couldn't prove it was Jason. Then Jason's lawyer got up and tried to spin it. "Your Honor, this is nothing more than a family misunderstanding blown out of proportion. My client simply wants his children to have a stable home. His brother, who lives alone, is refusing to share. This isn't harassment. It's a family dispute." Jason even faked tears on the stand. He said, "I just want my kids to have what's fair. I never meant to scare my brother. He's twisting everything to make me look like a criminal." I almost laughed out loud. When it was my turn, I kept it simple. "Your Honor, I worked for that house. I paid every cent. My brother has repeatedly trespassed, harassed me, and tried to take it by force. I have no obligation, moral or otherwise, to hand over my home. I just want to live in peace." The judge deliberated for what felt like an eternity. Finally, he said, "I am granting the restraining order. Jason, you are not to come within 200 feet of your brother's residence. You are not to contact him directly or indirectly. Violation of this order will result in immediate arrest." Jason's face twisted in rage. Emily gasped. My parents looked like someone had died. The fallout. After court, my parents cornered me in the parking lot. "You heartless bastard," my dad spat. "You've humiliated your brother in front of everyone. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mom's eyes were wet with fury. "We'll never forgive you for this. Never. You've destroyed this family." I walked away without answering. For the first time in my life, I felt free. But freedom comes with a price. Retaliation. The restraining order didn't magically fix everything. Jason obeyed it, technically. He didn't show up at my house anymore. But Emily did. She would drive by slowly, glaring at me if I was outside. Once, she shouted from her car, "You'll pay for this," before speeding off. My parents also found loopholes. Since the order was only against Jason, they could still harass me. They'd show up, pound on my door, scream at me from the sidewalk. The police could do nothing unless they trespassed. It became a game of endurance. How long could I hold out before I broke? The desperate measures. Then came the most disturbing part. One night, I was coming home late from work when I noticed something on my front porch. A baby stroller. Inside was a doll, but taped to the doll's chest was a note. This should be your responsibility too. My hands shook as I called the police. They took it seriously, logged it as harassment, but again, without proof of who left it, nothing could be done. I sat in my living room that night, staring at the stroller, and realized my family wasn't going to stop until something broke. The line in the sand. I talked to my lawyer again. He suggested suing for damages, harassment, emotional distress, maybe even pursuing custody implications to show Jason's instability. I hesitated. Suing my own brother and parents felt unthinkable, but so was living like this. I told him, do it. File whatever you can. Because if they wanted a war, then I was done playing defense. Part 4. When blood turns poison. The lawsuit papers had barely been filed when the silence began. For weeks, I didn't hear a peep from Jason, Emily, or my parents. No phone calls, no drive-bys, no cryptic threats. At first, I thought maybe they'd finally realized they were beaten. Maybe the restraining order and the threat of a lawsuit had sunk in. But the silence wasn't peace. It was the quiet before a storm, the calm before the storm. I tried to live normally again. I went to work. I did my grocery runs without looking over my shoulder. For the first time in months, I even invited a coworker over for dinner. But I couldn't relax. The stroller incident had burned itself into my brain. Every creak in the night made me jump. Every passing car outside my window made me reach for my phone. Then one Thursday evening, I came home from work and noticed something strange. My front door was locked, but the handle felt loose, like someone had been tampering with it. I checked the cameras. The system had gone offline for 3 hours in the middle of the day. That was the first time I truly believed Jason might try to break in. The break-in. It happened 2 nights later. I woke up at 2 a.m. to the sound of glass shattering. My heart leapt into my throat. I grabbed the baseball bat I kept by the bed and crept toward the noise. The sliding glass door in the kitchen was smashed. And standing there, half drunk, bleeding slightly from his hand, was Jason. "This is my house," he slurred. "You can't keep me out forever." I told him to get out. I shouted that the cops were already on their way. I had hit the panic button on my alarm system the second I heard the glass. But Jason didn't budge. He staggered into the kitchen, eyes wild. "You ruined everything, Dan. You turned Mom and Dad against me. You think you're better than me because you have money and a house." I raised the bat, hands shaking. "Jason, get out. Now." He laughed bitterly. "You won't hit me. You're too weak. You've always been too weak." That's when the sirens came. Flashing red and blue lights spilled into the kitchen. Jason turned, but it was too late. The police stormed in, ordered him to the ground, and cuffed him. As they dragged him out, Jason twisted his head to glare at me. His voice was venom. "This isn't over." The final straw. Jason was charged with breaking and entering, violating a restraining order, and property damage. My lawyer said jail time was likely. Emily showed up at my house 2 days later, pounding on the door, screaming that I had ruined their family. When I didn't answer, she hurled a rock through my mailbox and sped off. I turned over the footage to the police. She got slapped with a misdemeanor charge. My parents? They didn't even try to hide where they stood. They called me nonstop, leaving voicemails filled with rage. "How could you do this to your brother? He needed help, not handcuffs. You're not part of this family anymore, Daniel." Don't come crawling back when you're old and alone. I stopped listening. The court battle. The civil lawsuit dragged on for months. Jason's lawyer tried every trick in the book, claiming I'd promised the house, that I'd led him to believe he had a right to it, that my refusal was emotional abuse. My lawyer dismantled it all, piece by piece. The judge wasn't impressed with Jason's theatrics this time. Combined with his criminal charges, his credibility was shredded. In the end, not only did I win the case, Jason was ordered to pay part of my legal fees. Of course, he didn't have the money, so the debt just sat there like a scar. But the victory wasn't sweet. It was hollow, because winning meant losing my family completely. The last confrontation. 6 months after the break-in, I ran into my parents at the grocery store. They saw me before I could duck away. My dad's face turned red instantly. "You've destroyed your brother's life. He's in jail because of you." My mom's eyes were cold. "You'll never be welcome in this family again. When we die, don't bother showing up at the funeral." I wanted to scream that Jason had destroyed himself, that I had tried for years to keep the peace, that all I ever wanted was to be left alone in the house I worked for. But I didn't. I just pushed my cart past them and walked away. Reflection. It's been almost a year now. Jason is serving an 18-month sentence. Emily moved in with her parents. My parents still won't speak to me. The extended family is divided. Some think I did the right thing, others think I'm heartless. And me? I still live in the house, alone. Sometimes I sit on the porch at night and stare at the street, half expecting to see Jason's minivan pull up. My cameras are always on. My alarm is always armed. The house that was supposed to be my sanctuary feels like a fortress now. Do I regret it? No. I had no choice. But I grieve. I grieve the family I never really had. I grieve the parents who never loved me for who I was. I grieve the brother who decided envy was more important than blood. The truth is, blood doesn't make someone family. And sometimes, the people you share DNA with are the very ones you need protection from. Epilogue. Last week, I got a letter. It was from Jason, written from prison. All it said was, "When I get out, I'll take what's mine." I handed it straight to my lawyer. And then I sat in my living room, clutching the deed to my house, and realized something I should have known all along. This war may never end. But at least now, I know how to fight.